show you the other thing I want to change.
Well, show it to me now and then I can
Okay,
change
go
it.
to where women, the little girl chart.
Little girl chart. Okay.
Gail. Hi. Gail. Okay, hold on. I've got a big problem, Gail. I've got to fix it. One of my slides doesn't show. Okay. If it's not urgent, I need to do this. I've got to change slides. Okay. All right, thanks. Bye. I was just calling to tell me to put myself on mute. Everybody could hear everything I'm saying about fuck. Okay.
Hello, I can't hear anything.
Okay, thank you for letting me know.
I can't hear a thing.
Good morning, Silicon Valley. Good evening, Israel. And a wonderful day for you, wherever you are. Thank you all for being here with us on the MIT Enterprise Forum She Entrepreneurs webinar with Gwen C Edwards and Gail Gannon. Welcome. A few words about us. MIT Enterprise Forum of Israel is part of a global organization of dedicated professionals with local chapters affiliated with MIT, the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. We are open to all members of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we help entrepreneurs succeed faster. We trust that technology can solve big problems and do powerful things. The Israel chapter of the MIT Enterprise Forum, established in 1994, was there to support the development of the local startup nation. The MIT Enterprise Forum is a non-profit organization with chapters in most major markets in the United States and a growing number outside of the United States, including many in emerging markets. Our closest neighbor is the Pan-Arab chapter in Lebanon, and they're doing a great job. Dear guests, She Entrepreneurs is a joint initiative of the MIT Enterprise Forum of Israel and the US Embassy in Jerusalem. I would like to thank the US Embassy for their sponsorship and their continued support and efforts to build and strengthen the ties between Israel and the US. This event could not have taken place without the support of our highly involved commercial supporters. Efrati Galili Confino law firm has been active in the Israeli startup scene since its inception, covering all relevant aspects of the startup life cycle, from incorporation to M&A, IPOs, and beyond. Heidi Brun Associates is a boutique patent firm specializing in the high-tech field. HBA not only drafts patent applications, but also makes the process of streamlined a possibility, including dealing with patent side of legal issues when they arise. Heidi Brun herself is a member of the management of the MIT Enterprise Forum. Discount Tech, born with a DNA of innovation, equipped with a deep understanding of how the tech ecosystem works, provides high-tech company with an array of financial services, dedicated teams, and digital responsiveness aimed at helping them be where they need to be, when they need to be. IBI Tech Fund, part of IBI Investment House, delivers. The fund supports its portfolio companies throughout all stages of development and helps them on their track to success. And special thanks to Brainu, our in-kind sponsor, a group of wonder women of digital creative from concept and branding through a sharp, on-point marketing strategy and down to every last detail and aspect in social media. They rock it all. I can hear you cheering. Lori Almuli Confino, managing partner at Efrati Galili Confino and Company, brings with her over 30 years of extensive experience as an associate and partner at prominent law firms in the United States and Israel. We have been honored with a senior representative of the US Embassy to open this event. It is my pleasure to have Lori, as a representative of the private sector supporting our program, invite the US Embassy representative to stage.
Thank you, Ella. I would like to present Jonathan Schreier. He assumed his position as the Deputy Chief of Mission for the US Embassy in Jerusalem in October 2019. A career member of the US Senior Foreign Service, the most recently served in Pakistan as the Consul General and Principal Officer. Jonathan, please welcome you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Erev Tov. It's my pleasure and honor to join you for the opening of the She Entrepreneurs Program. And the US Embassy in Jerusalem is proud to team with the MIT Enterprise Forum Israel and the State Department's Economic Bureau in Washington, D.C. for this program. I want to start with just a brief story. When I was thinking about Femtech and women in technology, I was reminded of the story of Hedy Lamarr. And people from a generation or two older than me may remember her as one of the most renowned actresses on the screen in the middle part of the last century. She was born to a Jewish family in Austria, ended up moving to Hollywood in the 40s, and worked to raise war bonds and other things to fight the Nazis. But what people didn't realize until recently was she was also a technologist. And the stories have come out recently about how she was involved with and earned a patent for, a US patent for, spread spectrum technology, frequency hopping technology that is at the foundation of things like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and cellular technologies. Now, what she didn't have was the kind of networks and support systems that we have today. So she was an inventor of technology, but she didn't bring it to the market. She wasn't able to commercialize it. So I think those of you who are dialing in and those of you who are speaking today can talk about the new generation of women technologists who can be entrepreneurs as well. And there is an Israel connection here, which is that there is a forthcoming bio series that'll be shown on Apple TV Plus soon. And when the producers of that tried to figure out who would be better equipped to represent this, this hero of technology, they found an Israeli actor, Gal Gadot, known to most of the world as Wonder Woman, to play the part of Hedy Lamarr. And so it's with that I turn to the Wonder Women who are on this panel to thank them for their contributions today. And I'd like to start by thanking Ella Matalon, chairperson of the MIT Enterprise Forum in Israel, for her dedication and commitment to promoting entrepreneurship in Israel, especially among female high-tech entrepreneurs from diverse communities. And also for this effort to bring into being the She Entrepreneurs program, which is supported by POWER, which stands for Providing Opportunities for Women's Economic Rise, an initiative established in 2019 by the Department of State's Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs to promote women's economic empowerment. And this event here today brings together inspiring Israelis and Americans to discuss the challenges and opportunities facing female tech entrepreneurs. And as a career economic officer with the U.S. Foreign Service, I'm particularly pleased to introduce Manisha Singh, the Assistant Secretary of the State Department's Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs in Washington, D.C. Assistant Secretary Singh is the first woman to head the Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs and was unanimously confirmed by the Senate in November 2017. Her responsibilities include sanctions and trade policy, international finance, cybersecurity, emerging technologies, foreign investment, and aviation, as well as advancing American prosperity, entrepreneurship, and innovation worldwide by finding opportunities for U.S. companies and their workers to compete and succeed. And it's in this last area where she has worked through a series of innovation roundtables and worked towards the development of the POWER initiative. Assistant Secretary Singh holds a Juris Doctor degree from the University of Florida College of Law and a Master's of Laws in International Legal Studies from the American University Washington College of Law. Assistant Secretary Singh, thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's my privilege to be introduced by one of our superstar econ officers. So Jonathan, I look forward to seeing you and your colleagues at Embassy Jerusalem in person at some point. And thank you also for Ella for putting together this great event. Jonathan, please also give my regards to Ambassador Friedman, as he is a great supporter of both the Economic Bureau and the POWER initiative. I really wish that I could be there in person to see you all and meet this amazing group of women entrepreneurs who have signed up for this POWER event. And I really want to thank Embassy Jerusalem and my team here in Washington to put this together. Our most valuable asset, our most valuable diplomatic asset, is our dedicated team serving abroad. And I know this from my visit a couple years ago to both Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So it's great to be here with you today talking about two topics that are really, really important to me personally. Strategic partnerships are central to promoting women's economic empowerment and to our initiative, as Jonathan described, providing opportunities for women's economic rise, or POWER. We're so pleased that the MIT Enterprise Forum of Israel is partnering with us today on an entrepreneurial ecosystem to benefit women. The mission to provide tech entrepreneurs and startups with unique platforms and access to industry experts precisely aligns with our goals in the Economic Bureau. In my current role, I've prioritized advancing women's economic empowerment and innovation policy. I believe that ensuring our workforce can prosper in the digital economy of today and the economy of the future will maximize our sustainable growth. In order to achieve this, as policymakers, it's our job to level the playing field for all entrepreneurs building companies of all sizes. And we know that sustainable growth requires the inclusion of every sector of the population. These themes are represented throughout President Trump's national security strategy, which states that economic security is national security, and that societies which empower women to participate fully in civic and economic life are far more peaceful and more prosperous. In the Economic Bureau, we have specifically tailored our mission as empowering growth and securing our future. And we're looking to shape our post-pandemic future through a strategy for global economic activity and recovery, or GEAR. It plans for us to boost our economy back to the growth and employment levels we had before the pandemic. As small business owners, women entrepreneurs are a central component in this recovery, and we want to ensure that everyone is included in GEAR. Both women entrepreneurs and the digital economy will propel our global economic recovery. Women-owned businesses represent some of the fastest growing technology startups right now. They have stepped up during the global crisis to make and sell masks and other necessary supplies needed to fight the pandemic. When women entrepreneurs are successful, we better support our families, provide essential goods and services to communities, hire more workers, and effectively contribute to a nation's GDP growth. The statistics show us just how important women entrepreneurs are. In the WGDP Index, a landmark report released earlier this year, the White House Council of Economic Advisors found that eliminating legal restrictions on women's economic participation could increase annual global GDP by $7.7 trillion, or 8.3%. At this rate, we really can't afford to empower women entrepreneurs. A private sector study by McKinsey concluded that full and equal participation of women in the workforce could add $28 trillion to the global economy in the coming years. The digital economy will specifically generate optimistic momentum in our post-pandemic recovery. Industries such as artificial intelligence are expected to grow globally by 16% this year. This will create many new opportunities across the economic spectrum. The conversation we're having today is very timely and very relevant. Amid the pandemic, technology supports our health, our livelihoods, and our security. Emerging technologies will continue to transform the way that we engage in every aspect of our lives. It's more important than ever to position our workforce at the forefront of these opportunities, and women comprise the strongest part of our growing workforce. The Power Initiative is a part of this. And speaking with entrepreneurs in Israel today is a perfect conversation for power, because the idea for power originated with my visit to both Tel Aviv and Jerusalem a couple of years ago. In fact, in Tel Aviv, I sat down with a group of women tech and finance entrepreneurs. And what I heard from them was they felt relatively successful in their local and perhaps even regional market. However, they wanted to be able to expand globally. In fact, one of the women specifically said to me, I would love to explore opportunities in the United States. How can I better do this? In my travels to other countries around the world, I kept hearing this same narrative. We've had a little bit of success, but could use help with the platforms, the networking, the financing that really would enable us to grow and scale our businesses into multinational enterprises. So I thought to myself, well, as the economic arm of the State Department with a global reach, what sort of platforms can we provide for women worldwide? Well, this is how power originated. Our aim is to create a network that provides resources and identifies barriers through partnerships with the private sector, utilizing our missions abroad as the conveners. So you can see this project here today is the perfect example of that. We worked with our great colleagues at U.S. Embassy Jerusalem, with the MIT Enterprise Forum, and with women entrepreneurs who are seeking to utilize the benefits of this platform. So for me, this is the culmination of exactly what I envisioned when we first talked about power. And the fact that we're having this conversation between American women entrepreneurs and Israeli women entrepreneurs makes it even more special. Israel is one of our strongest partners and allies in security, in business, and most importantly, in friendship. Creating new networks between American and Israeli women grows and deepens the partnership between our nations even further. My power team and I feel that this seminar you are holding today should serve as a model for other power projects. One of the things that we wanted to emphasize was a concrete, deliverable result. There are lots of great networking forums, and we didn't want to create just another forum for women to come together. We wanted to do something that had a measurable impact for women entrepreneurs. And we wanted to make sure that there was a US nexus. We want American entrepreneurs and institutions like MIT to be able to create mutually beneficial partnerships all over the world. So looking forward, let's continue to measure our impact and continue to deliver actionable results. In closing, I want to thank you, the businesswomen and entrepreneurs participating today, for being a part of this seminar. We hope that you will gain the power to move through these challenging times and become even more successful once we're through this pandemic world that has gripped us all right now. I also want to thank my staff, Bita Ade and Christine Bucci, for bringing the power vision to life. I couldn't do my job without the exceptionally great staff I have here in the Economic Bureau. Finally, I ask all of you to please stay in touch with us. Let us know how you're doing and let us know how we can help. Thank you again, Jonathan, to you and your colleagues at Embassy Jerusalem for putting this great event together. And we look forward to seeing you again in person very soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Deputy Chief of Mission, Jonathan Schreier, and Assistant Secretary of Economics, Manisha Singh. And this is very interesting. I hope we hear more about power in the future. And that's an opportunity to say thank you to the MIT Enterprise Forum team, and in particular, Michal Levy-Medina, Head of Business Development, and Ari Fatal, who's a project manager with us. And now I would like to share a personal story. When I was 16 years old, I had to choose a topic for our annual assignment in school, a paper on a topic of choice. I chose to write about women's role in society. And I came across a research which I cannot forget. It reflected the enormous gap in perception between women and men, girls and boys. In the research, participants were asked to classify human traits, first as male or female, then as good or bad. The results were astonishing. There was a very high correlation between good and male, bad and female. Okay, women were pretty, well-behaved, capable of expressing emotions, obedient, but everything that had to do with handling yourself in the world, smarts, leadership, ability to cope with crisis, these were all marked as manly, masculine traits. It was a straightforward description of our inner biases, and it was shocking. 30 years later, my father-in-law found a paper I wrote in the attic. It was interesting to look back at me, the teenager. I opened the paper and read the first page. It said, "I hope my children read this as a historical paper. But we know this is not a historic paper. Well, it is not. Little girls are taught to help mom in the kitchen, look at the books in kindergartens. Little boys to become supermen. Well, thank God we have superwomen now. Our socialization is stopping things from happening. The inner bias is still there. A Danish friend asked me 2 weeks ago, women serve in the army in Israel, don't they? Are women more equal in Israel? And yes, we serve in the army. However, it's been 26 years since Alice Miller stood in front of the Supreme Court demanding a chance to be part of a male-only elite pilot course. Miller always had a passion for aviation. Following high school, she received her civilian pilot license and pursued a degree in aerospace engineering. At 23, she sued the military for her right to enlist into the prestigious pilot's course. In a historic vote, the Israeli Supreme Court deemed the ban on female recruits to the aviation course as unconstitutional. In her case, however, the army disqualified her due to what they described as overly motivated. Israel president at the time and former commander of the Air Force, Ezra Weizmann, was quoted saying, "Have you ever seen a man knitting socks? A woman carrying out surgery or conducting an orchestra?" In line with that, the slogan of the Air Force at the time was, "The good guys go to the Air Force, the good girls go to the pilots." Golda Meir was one of the first women prime ministers in the world. They used to say that when she walked around in shorts, which she didn't, you could see her, you know what, hanging out. She ruled for 5 out of 72 years of the State of Israel. We haven't seen a female PM since, and we currently have about 25% women in parliament. And throughout the history of Israel, with over 100 years of leading academic institutes, we have witnessed only one woman presiding over a university in Israel. This was Rivka Karmi at BGU. Yes, we can get a degree in university, open our own bank account, we can vote and get elected. We have women mayors and ministers and women managing banks and investment firms. However, we need to remember that all of these breakouts, pieces in the glass ceiling above us, were achieved by the work of dedicated feminists and equal rights fighters. And in this context, I have to mention the late Member of Parliament, Shulamit Aloni, who did an incredible job at it. In Israel, feminism is still yuck, where the term alone triggers fear and damnation, sadly, even today. Alice Miller broke the glass ceiling for women pilots, but there are many more glass ceilings to be broken. It is my pleasure to now invite Anya Elnan, Vice President of the Israel Innovation Authority, to speak about Women in Tech Entrepreneurship 2020. Anya joined the public sector following a career in high-tech and venture capital. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the scale, IIA's annual investment budget is close to $500 million US. Anya, thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I will use the slides. It's hard to go after you. So I'm gonna say, I'm not gonna share any personal stories. I'm just gonna say we've come along, apart from Jonathan, who is very welcome here, all the speakers are accomplished women. And it's not because the course is about women, it's because women are so accomplished and we can all learn from each other. So I will talk a little bit about Israel Innovation Authority, government agency fully funded by the government. As I said, $500 million US annual budget. Our goal is to promote sustainable and inclusive economic growth through innovation. And it's a very important, every word is important. Today we're going to talk about inclusive. Inclusive means innovation that comes from every part of the population, including Arab citizens, including ultra-conservative citizens, including females, including Ethiopian including everybody. And the reason we need everybody is not just to be politically correct or inclusive. It's because in order to make our economy strong, in order to make our high tech strong, we need female entrepreneurs. We need female programmers. We need female AI specialists. Without this population, part of our high tech is not as developed as it could be, not as successful as it could be. And that's why one of our major goals is enhancing economic impact of high tech, meaning, today high tech employs less than 10% of the workforce. It's responsible for over 45% of export, but only less than 10% of population is employed in very good positions, very good jobs, but not enough. So this is our goal. And one of the programs or one of the goals is to increase the number of female entrepreneurs. Innovation Authority supports about 1,500 innovative projects every year. Less than 10% are women entrepreneurs, less than 10%. It's actually closer to 8%. So when we say less than 10%, it's to make it seem better. It's a little better than before. Last year, we funded a new program that's supposed to increase the number of female ventures and to help them succeed, a little like a deal flow management for your programs. So in order for Power to be able to help Israeli women entrepreneurs, we need to have them. And it's not as easy. So I will share with you the program very quickly. Hopefully the audience consists of a lot of female entrepreneurs and female potential entrepreneurs. So the program provides preferential financial support. Every innovative project that comes to us for support, if it's a regular project, we will provide anywhere between 30 to 50% of the required budget. If it's a female entrepreneur, we will provide 75% the first year and 70% the second year. And the meaning of this is that if it's a female entrepreneur, she has less money to bring to the matching table. So we never provide 100% funding. We always provide part of the funding, and the company has to bring private funding. So in this scheme, if a company is led by a female entrepreneur who has at least 1/3 of the shares, or a group of entrepreneurs who have together 1/3 of the shares, we will provide 75%, and they only need to bring 25% private money. So let's see what this program did. So in 2018, believe it or not, we had 19 applications. And we supported 5, which is pretty low for us. 25% is low. Now I have to tell you, we provide more money, but we don't compromise on quality. So these ventures have to be as innovative and have as big a global potential as any other. So it's not that we will support bad projects just to say we supported female entrepreneurs. We're still looking for quality because that's the given if you want to succeed. So this year, the number increased dramatically, and also the support rate increased to a good degree. But look at this. This year, we supported about $10 million out of a budget of $500 million. This is crazy. So there's still a long way to go. I think it's pretty clear that money is not the only problem. So if we thought, it's harder for women to raise capital, so if we give them more money, we'll make it easier for them to raise capital. Yeah, that helps. Especially it helps in a way that women say, okay, I have a better chance, I will go for it. But still, it's not enough. It's also about support network. It's also about opening doors. It's also about overcoming inequality. It's also about overcoming misconceptions, like Ayla said. It's also about, do I really want to take the chance? And I think what you guys are doing in this workshop and in the whole program is really important, because we provide the money, but you actually provide the way to succeed. And I'm happy to be part of this. I'll say a few words about Femtech. So I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but female entrepreneurship seems to always go with Femtech. And I'm not sure why. I guess there must be a good reason. So maybe women are thinking of how to solve women's problems. Maybe women feel more comfortable. Of course, there are a lot of women in AI. You know, Kira Radinsky just very successfully raised money for her second or third company. But these are all Femtech companies. And I have to tell you, I took this from last year's event. We had a women's health event exactly a year ago. And this is a slide I made for that event. These are all Israeli Femtech companies. And how shall I say? There wasn't that much to change. So when I said, let's do an up-to-date slide, I didn't have that much to add. So I think we're on the way. We have some exciting companies. We still have a lot of work to do to even bring women to the table and then to help them succeed. I wanted to finish with one company. I met those three amazing women at a conference last year. They were showing their very innovative and interesting product, just a prototype. They had a mock-up. And I said, well, how are you going to fund this? And we had this discussion. I said, you know, we have this program. Why don't you submit to us? And they did. And we support those wonderful women with a very, very important program. I'm not going to describe, but you can see, if you can see my slide, it solves important problem. And in this last year, they just made such a huge progress. And they've done 80 plus women user trial. They're about to get the regulation. They're about to launch the product. And we're very, very happy to be part of their success. So thank you so much. And I wish a lot of success to all the women in this program and all the women listening. And if any of you need funding or need help submitting to Innovation Authority, please write me a note and I will personally help. And you can share my email. I don't know how to do it now. I should have thought about it before. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Anya. Thank you so much. So we heard some very interesting statistics, both from Manisha Singh and from Anya Eldan. And we are, you know, I spoke about the negative things that we've seen in the past, but we are definitely going into a new era now. And I'd like to ask our next speaker, Gwen Edwards, to take over. And it is my pleasure to introduce you, Gwen, on a lecture on the rising ROI, return on investment, of women tech entrepreneurs. Now, a word about Gwen. Gwen C Edwards is the managing director of Golden Seeds and chairs the Angel Resource Institute. And she's our keynote speaker today, bringing her strong background as an executive in IT, entrepreneur and CEO of a venture-backed tech company, co-founder of the Silicon Valley chapter of Golden Seeds, and US's most active angel investment network focused on women leaders, and vast experience in mentoring women entrepreneurs. Thank you so much, Gwen, for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ayla. Good evening, everyone. It's morning here, and it's wonderful to have this clock working in our favor in many ways. Thank you for that kind introduction. I want to start and ask if any of you remember, and it's still true today, that this common practice about referring to women as poor drivers. Well, you know, women get distracted while driving, etc. But since women may not be tooting their own horn, You may not realize that women are now, in fact, literally driving the global economy. This is a really big statement. It's happening in multiple ways and in multiple levels. But don't worry, guys, you're in good hands. It's really going to help women and men. In fact, this phenomenon of women's leadership and influence is in many ways startlingly old news. Some of us are discovering it now and thinking, was that really true? But I'd like to put some of this news in perspective and declare why this is all so very relevant to women as entrepreneurs, to women in Israel, to the growth economy, to returns on our investments, and of course, our upcoming program, She Entrepreneurs. It was actually way back in 2003 when I discovered this book by Shoshana Zuboff. And it was my first exposure to a detailed economic analysis of what was happening in corporate America. And I was actually spellbound. I think it was because I had also recently left the ranks. I had a great executive position, and I decided I was going to join the ranks of Silicon Valley's entrepreneurs and became CEO of one of the startups, venture capital backed. This book was actually the foreshadowing of a breakdown in the ability of large corporations to effectively serve their customers or to even know them well. And it was the foreshadowing of women as a new category of entrepreneurs. It wasn't explicitly stated, but it's clear when you read this book. This was a 480-page tome, I called it. And I found myself reading this voluntarily. It wasn't an assignment. I wasn't in an MBA program at the time. I was fascinated by this data because it was the first time I was actually seeing how relevant this breakdown in the corporate economy was and why that was also fueling entrepreneurship. Women were becoming entrepreneurs out of necessity in many respects because they wanted a different culture. They wanted to find the new innovation. They were coming up with incredible ideas. And they were also becoming entrepreneurs because they could. They had newfound advanced degrees and skills. And many were frankly tired of hitting the glass ceiling, ready to venture out. But what I'll never forget in this section was the section in the book that went into this extensive detail on the fact that women controlled, even in 2003, 70 to 80% of all consumer spend. Now, this was a force not even remotely understood at the time. Corporations were cranking out cars and financial products and other services that women could really care less about. Think about the most popular car right now in the United States is the SUV. And you think, is that really a men's choice of car? It's hardly sexy. And it's now the #1 best-selling car in the United States. Why? It's safe, it's practical for women. But let's talk about this number. This amount of money, $20 trillion is spent globally, not over 10 years, each year, spent by women. And these women are spending this money, and companies that they're buying the products from are really just now discovering that they need to better understand the needs of the buyer. As they learn that women is a market, if you think of women as a market, you can segment that market. Yes, women is not a market like pharma or clean tech or femtech or infotech, but it is a market. When you think about women as a market globally, Boston Consulting Group put it in perspective and said, women as a market are larger in purchasing power than the countries of China and India combined. Now, that's a statement that gets your attention. And this is really representing a groundswell of change in the making. Here's what's happening. Still today, 2003, yes, that was many years ago, pointed out by Shoshana Zuboff. But today, women still feel 91% say advertisers don't serve them. They don't understand them. They don't know how to reach them. And when that's happening today, that's representing another huge opportunity. What's missing? So look at this, the number of consumer purchases by women. I think this is quite stunning when you realize that 91% of homes are purchased by women. They make the ultimate decision. It's men and women's money. They make the decision. PCs, 66. Vacations, healthcare. 80% of the decisions are made by women. New cars, bank accounts, food, 93%, may not be surprising. But over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, 93% of women make those decisions. So you have to wonder, when you're planning to distribute a new innovative product through a drugstore or pharmacy, do men go there? Are they going to find that product? We've got great stories we'll tell during the class about some failures because people didn't pay attention to this data. But there's another sea change occurring, and that is, consider this $20 trillion per year that's spent, and then think about the fact that that's purchasing power. But in addition to that, women control immense wealth. They control an estimated $20 to $40 trillion of personal wealth, and they're going to inherit more when spouses die. Women outlive men, as we know. And at the same time, here's an interesting fact that financial institutions are aware of, that when women lose their spouse, typically within 1 year, they switch financial advisors. So advisors are on the alert. Why? Why are they leaving us? Well, they don't like to be patronized, and they bring their values to the table. They want to start looking at how do they make their money work in the world for good. They care more about social impact. And guess what? Social impact doesn't mean you give up returns. So they're smart with their money and having powerful impact around the world. So she knows that you don't have to give up anything on returns to invest in companies that have very high positive social impact scores. They might rank as favorite places to work. You can do this for yourself. You start to see the correlations. Happy employees lead to better companies and better returns. And social impact actually outperforms the S&P 500. And we found this over the last 10 years at least. Sometimes by just 1%, depending on the fund you're in, sometimes by much higher percentages. So this is a great book, an ex-McKinsey friend here in the Silicon Valley that's been trying to get this message across. The data is just compelling. So the point is, long gone are the days when you'd have to give up returns to do good. Let's take a look at how this relates to women, again, as leaders, not just women as managers of money or influencing products by their purchasing power. 2008, so just a few years after this book came out, but still pretty interesting that it was that long ago, McKinsey issued a groundbreaking study that I thought would prompt great change, because they basically said, it's in a desire to have higher investor returns that women improve the performance of companies in the market. This is some great data that shows when just one or more women are on boards, you start to outperform, and that's the gray line going up. Market caps of companies with more than $10 million, they outperform when they have at least one woman, and when they have more than one, they even further outperform. So let's look at what happens if you don't have a woman CEO, but you have more women in senior leadership. Again, you get this return on investment that's compelling. Add more women to senior management, let their voices be heard. They'll express what's needed in the market, guide the companies. You get higher share prices. So this is the study that was really knocked people's socks off, as we say. This was a study over 12 years of the Fortune 1000 CEOs and the ones that were women. How did they fare over 12 years? Look at this performance, 348% higher returns. This is the data that caught the attention of Melinda Gates, and you can see her quoted in the press over several years about this study. It's compelling. So even when this came out, I thought, well, we're going to see more women on boards. No, that's slowly happening. It's taking a long time. I've slowly learned that systemic change is difficult to achieve, but it is happening. And another thing that's happening, instead of waiting for this, for more women to be on boards, financial institutions are also creating products. So you can buy products and invest in companies that have more women on boards. And guess what they're doing? Outperforming the S&P 500. So very, very compelling that women are great returns on investment. But we have to stop and think about this for a moment. So why is this happening? You know, could it be that there, you know, is something different about women's brains? Are we actually wired differently? Do we think differently? And is there any basis in fact that there is something unique that needs to be recognized? So again, a book that was mind-boggling. In 2006, I read this book by Luann Brindenstein, a UCSF neurologist. She released this book called The Female Brain, and it was loaded with scientific data describing the differences between male and female brains, MRI scans, activity levels, how they're literally different. And I was thrilled to discover this January, Scientific American, January issue, it's all about, is there a female brain? And guess who's highlighted? An Israeli scientist. She's from Tel Aviv. Her name is Daphne Joel, Tel Aviv University. And she started to build on Louise Brindenstein's research. She discovered that there's a mosaic brain. It's not just female and male. You can have both qualities or, you know, a tendency towards more in one gender or the other, but still confirmed this data, which is very interesting. So Dr. Brindenstein, a neurologist at UCSF, I want to quote from her. She said, it's not as if we all start out with the same brain structures. They are different by nature. Think about this. What if the communication center is bigger in one brain than the other? What if the emotional memory center is bigger in one brain than the other? What if one brain develops a greater ability to read cues in people than another? In this case, you would have a person whose reality dictated that communications, connection, emotional security, and responsiveness were the primary values. This person would prize these qualities above all others and be baffled by another person with a brain that didn't grasp the importance of these qualities. In essence, you would have someone with a female brain. So Dr. Brindenstein then adds, this is on the back of her book, women will come away from this book knowing they have a lean, mean communicating machine. Men will develop a serious case of brain envy. So obviously this is empowering to know and appreciate. Sometimes women are accused of being indecisive, when in fact, we know that they're processing more information about each decision. They'll think, instead of to act now or not, ooh, if I take that action, how will it affect my friends, my family, my community? Ooh, maybe I need to rethink that. Could be perceived as indecisiveness. It's also processing a greater data set before an action. And this is one of the attributes that we think is enabling companies to make better decisions and for women to be great leaders and have brains that complement those of men. So it's also interesting that here we are at a time when the world is more complex than ever. Species on our planet are more vulnerable than ever. Our future safety and security is more vulnerable than ever. And our need for innovation is more vulnerable than ever. But guess what? We have women, 50+% of the population, with these fantastic brains that are well educated, ready to join men and take leadership positions to find balance, to lend balance, and to lend perspective and to innovate. So again, imagine knowing that these brains may cause a board to stop and rethink a plan before taking action, to consider the broader consequences, and they're the same qualities that improve returns on our investments. Like, what could be more fantastic than that? So as we see women outperform at the CEO level in the boardroom, we definitely know there's something deeper than just the look, the dress, the voice tonality, or even life experiences of people who have joined the team. Again, the financial benefits, I mentioned some of the institutions are already coming up with packages with products that you can invest in that, again, reinforce this. But we also know there's something pretty interesting about the power of inclusion, just bringing women to the table to assess, evaluate, and guide, and sometimes caution the otherwise but necessary dangerous alpha in the room. This is a popular book that was very interesting way to describe what we call the bro culture and brotopia. And believe me, it's alive and well in Silicon Valley. You can take a quick look at companies like Uber. Twitter had no women on their board, and sadly, they actually claimed they couldn't find a qualified woman to put on their board. Well, after a little bit of ridicule, they found a few, and they have changed. But this is a culture that plays out in Silicon Valley daily. But still, she persists, and we have hope. To segue back to women as entrepreneurs and the return on investment in women, you'll love this. Another key way to increase your returns as investors and improve the world, invest in women entrepreneurs. This data is from a study by a fellow in Silicon Valley, a VC, Josh Koppelman. He looked at his own portfolio, among others, but he found 63% higher returns than the rest of his portfolio when there was at least a woman founder. And we've seen other data around women as CEOs. I want to comment that we have, a few years later, I was actually sitting at the NASDAQ Center in San Francisco, and Josh Koppelman was on a panel, and women were asking him, well, come on, can't you help us out? We've got to do something, especially venture capital. Venture is not coming to the table as much as angel. And Koppelman smiled and he said, hey, markets become efficient quickly enough. Can't you let those of us who get it benefit a little bit longer? Let's make the other guys figure it out for themselves. Women are terrific investments as entrepreneurs and stewards of capital. So we all laughed because we, who couldn't appreciate this kind of backhanded compliment? But here we have it from Josh Koppelman's lips to your ears. We're spreading the word. Golden Seeds, where I'm a managing director and very involved in the angel investing activity. I co-led the chapter, co-founded it in Silicon Valley. And we can attest to the sheer number of portfolio companies that not only with great exits, but they're still operating today, way more than the norm, than the average. So we're very, very excited to see the advent of a fund in Israel. And that is so exciting to see this focus on women entrepreneurs. It's really, really important. And as we heard earlier today, there's data that shows at least $5 trillion in incremental upside if this gender gap could be crossed, this chasm could be crossed. This is global GDP. But look at in the MENA region alone, there's an incremental $300 to $600 billion. In North America, $400 to $800 billion that we could achieve in incremental economic growth if we could encourage and activate and support more women becoming entrepreneurs. There is a lot to gain. So what else do we know works, and what can help address this gap? Well, we know there's unconscious bias. Let me come back to that. We know there's unconscious bias when investors view investor decks. Men ask different questions of women. Men will ask questions of men that are aspirational. Gee, how big could that be? Well, what if you could do this? What if you got an extra 20 million in capital? What could you do? They ask women questions like, but when are you going to hit cash flow positive? When's your break even? That don't encourage the woman to think about how to be really hugely successful. We've learned a lot about the language between men and women. And now we know, because we know this, we're smarter. We can also teach women how to turn a question into an aspirational answer. We also now know a lot more about valuations and women, some interesting data. It's going to be published within probably 24 hours, but I'll share it from Angel Resource Institute's research. We now are seeing that at the seed stage, men have higher valuations by almost 70% than do women. So that's good for an investor, but it also says, is there something else that we can help women understand so they can get the round size of capital they need and have fairer valuations? At the end of the day, success is success, and we can do well still and not have that kind of a gap. We also know a lot about what makes a company investable and what's good for investors and entrepreneurs, and we can teach this. So it's very exciting to know that if you understood as an entrepreneur how investors think and how to build an investable company, that's what we need more of, so that entrepreneurs, you don't waste your time, you get it right, and investors have great returns. So there's another area that we're working on where there's been very little change. It's almost no change, where venture capital only invests a very small amount in women-led companies. 2.2%, that number barely budged. Now I'm seeing 3%. I saw some recent numbers closer to 5%. But in any case, what's so compelling about this data, and sadly, is that when women do get venture capital, 70% of the time, it's because the VC had a woman partner in their fund. And yet, so, you know, they see the deal, they get the deal, they then pitch it to their partners. But guess what? Only 7% of VCs have a woman partner in their group. So therein lies the unconscious bias. We're clear it's unconscious because we are sure that if men really could see these opportunities, they could care less whether you have stripes or you're a different color or you have horns. They just want to know what they can do to have great funds. They're not here for social inclusion. They're here to make money. And we know women drive great returns. So working through that unconscious bias is something we're working on. Just a few minutes on the growth of women angels, because this is so relevant to Israel. Here's what we've accomplished, and we've lived it and seen it and participated, is that in 2004, only 5% of all angels in the United States were women. This is US data. Today, it's over 30%. Now, it's taken a while. It didn't happen overnight. But this is where, as women, you don't have to become a VC. You can learn about investing. You can support entrepreneurs that you really, really believe in. And maybe you have extra operational skills you can bring to the table. This fact is making a huge difference in the United States. And look at this, angel funding of women-led companies. It was only 3% in 2004. 3% of women seeking angel capital received it. Now it's over 20%. Again, same period of time. So clearly there's a correlation. And this also addresses the unconscious bias. We know that when women see companies they love, they get the opportunity, they get the idea. They can put a little bit of money behind them and help get them to that next level. So we know women build great, great companies. These are just a few that I'm particularly proud of and must say I have a vested interest in. They're just fabulous. And here's one, look at this rags to riches story, lower left on the screen. Serbi Sarna was CEO of Envision. I say was because she had a beautiful, brilliant exit. It's a rags to riches story. A young woman grew up in rural India. She had a bachelor's degree from UC Berkeley, accepted at Berkeley. She didn't go on for an advanced degree. She was too eager to get a company going. She wanted to tackle ovarian cancer. 5 years later, she was acquired by Boston Scientific. And it is a home run story. Julia Hu, CEO of Lark. She's had a huge pivot, but at the very beginning, very, very interesting. She had her product on the shelves of Apple her first year. Now she's just an AI company, but I say just, focused on telemedicine. Fabulous, fabulous company. Stay tuned. You've got to see what happens. It's amazing over the next year to 2 years. And Cadenza Innovation, another entrepreneur focusing on clean tech, clean energy, and speaks at Davos annually. Now, Christina actually decided she wasn't sure she wanted venture. She said, I want to be angel-backed only, because she's trying to defy the club that some strive to join. She ran a venture-backed company and decided, you know what, maybe I'll go a different route this time. We're backing her. So again, little passports, another great example. We could go on about all these. There's so many. And yet I want to bring another really positive sign of hope and what we can do collectively in the ecosystem of Israel and what's been happening here. In 2005, we were a little lonely as Golden Seeds. We know all these people on this chart personally and well. We were a small crew trying to make a difference, focusing on women. Look at today. This ecosystem is so vibrant. There are more organizations popping up every day practically. So we think, gosh, we can barely keep track. This is a high-class problem. Why? Women themselves are discovering women are great investments. We're pulling men in, and when we can't, we're doing it ourselves. But what's the next challenge? I mentioned VC. Well, we're tackling that too. All Raise is an organization you may hear more about. They're pushing the VC industry to giving them high quality resumes, having a huge annual conference, networking. It's a movement to generate action. And thanks to Eileen Lee of Cowboy Ventures for her leadership. And remember, women are also starting their own funds. So again, this is about getting more women to partner with men. And when you can't, women are starting their own. And they're raising money, guess from where? The wealth I mentioned earlier. So we're here to amplify female voices, accelerate their success, create a tech culture where women are leading and shaping and funding the future. And this is just something we know we can do. We've done it, we're doing it. And so again, and when we can't, we're changing the table. So women are coming to the table, and then we're discovering, you know what, maybe we'll just change the shape of this table and do things differently. There are actually alternative structures being considered and funded. Revenue-based financing is something very new where entrepreneurs and their investors can design their own exit. So this is something else we'll cover in our course. Again, it's optionality, giving optionality to entrepreneurs. So not only are women joining the ranks of CEOs, I mentioned, we're also shaping this ecosystem by our very presence, by bringing our values, our desired outcomes. We're shaping the ecosystems in which we're joining. So on that note, for some reason, my She Entrepreneur image is not populating again, but I just want to say thank you so much. It's fabulous to be part of this. We have every reason to be energized, excited, inspired by what lies ahead. There are billions of dollars of wealth creation, hundreds of new innovative entrepreneurs solving problems, enhancing the quality of our lives for women and men, for our children, for our communities. We can't wait to partner with you all in these coming weeks and share all this information, ideas, experiences, have a fabulous exchange. And thank you so much, Ayla, for all your work in putting this together into MIT's Enterprise Forum. And thank you to my own country's embassy for all you do to support causes like She Entrepreneurs. It really makes us proud. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Gwen, for this incredible lecture. And it's so interesting to see what's going on and how many opportunities are open to us. And how good women are how well women are doing and how little people know about this. This is so important to share this information. Thank you so much. This is just great. I could share experience after experience about, being interviewed by 5 men at the age of 23 who asked me, but you're going to have a family and children, aren't you? At the age of 23, I had my first child at 38, okay? Forget it. Let's look into the future. Gwen mentioned the course, an acceleration program, which we will run exactly 3 weeks from today. I would like now to hand over the microphone to Gail Gannon, who's co-leading this course together with Gwen. Gail Gannon will be joining Gwen on stage and co-leading the 9-meeting Foundry 2020 in the months of August, September. Gail is Managing Director of a boutique healthcare investment bank, CEO of a startup strategy company, an angel investor herself to women in tech, and an entrepreneur with a health tech, biotech background. Thank you so much, Gail. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ayla, for the kind introduction. And thank you, Gwen, for the great synthesis about women as influential decision makers, and more importantly, an economic global force that will actually drive our future now and into the next century. And so with that, I want to also thank everyone. I'm very honored to be joining all these very esteemed speakers during this very seminal webinar. And so in my case here, the topic at hand I'm going to focus on is actually on Femtech rising and beyond. And so with that, I just wanted to, let's see if I can have us focus a little bit on some statistics. And Gwen gave a plethora of information that talks about women as really a strong economic driver of power, as well as in terms of how they're going to influence the global trajectory of the world. And so I'm going to actually go back and narrow the focus a little bit and talk about just particularly Femtech and what its implications are going forward. And so with that, as you all know, there's some common statistics, one of which is that women are de facto the caretakers of family. And so it's not surprising to hear that 90% of all the primary care decision-making is done by women. But what is surprising is that 75 to 85% of women are more likely than men to actually use digital tools. Now that's interesting. Why is that? So what we're thinking is that one of the issues that I have known and we've observed over time is that there seems to be a closing of the digital divide. I think that's really helped. And so it's as a consequence of the worldwide access to the internet and mobile platforms, women have been able to obtain information that they traditionally otherwise hadn't gotten before. And so with that, they've used the power of information to make better decisions, more informed for their families. They've influenced their friends, but just as important with that, it's now given them a new venue, a new platform to raise their voices. And that's important because their decision-making and the sharing of the decision-making process actually creates more of a global impact that we didn't otherwise experience. So the convergence of technology has actually helped women in many ways. And why do I mention that? Well, it also actually levels the playing field. So in typical ways of women get education in many countries still today, where education is not an equitable thing, you have to actually go out and actively source education as a woman, as a young female. And as to Ayla's point, often you're giving the exact opposite messages where your best education is in the household and not out in the broader community. So with that in mind now, the interesting aspects of the convergence of both technology and women being a force and appreciating that, you now see that and this is hopeful and promising news, that 1 in 5 of board members in the Fortune 500 healthcare community are women. That's important and that's promising, because what that will do is the women will actually drive the decisions that actually will help create products and services in the future that are most important to women. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview. And again, this is just a taste. And you saw this earlier with Anya introducing some of the Femtech companies that are in Israel. And this is a reflection of some of the companies worldwide. This is actually an older slide. This is actually in 2017. I just brought this to your attention because I wanted to sort of just back down and talk about what is Femtech. Femtech traditionally was actually defined as software and diagnostics and therapeutics and services to improve women's health, and specifically reproductive health and even more narrowly, fertility, where the bulk of the funds were actually focused on getting pregnant, pregnancy, and post-pregnancy. And now in time, what's good news is, and I was actually, let me just see if I can click here. You can see that I circled one particular company, which we'll get to, which is called Athena Feminine Technology, which I'll get to in just a minute. But I just wanted you to observe that this is actually one landscape in 2017, and here's 2019. And as you can see, it's become a more robust market. There's an expansion of going from cradle to crib in women's health, so general health and wellness on women. And why is that important? What's important because what we are now realizing in science is that the disease manifests differently in women. Why do I say that? Well, one of the things that people may not recognize that when the science is becoming more mature, they're looking at how women are experiencing the diseases and how it's reflected in our bodies, and even in an articulation of the language of how women describe the disease process. And so I'll give you an example. In the cases of how women are affected by disease differently, in the area of addiction, right? Even though it's widely known that men abuse illicit drugs more than women, unfortunately, are more likely to fatally die of an overdose, a substance use, than men. That's surprising. And what are we doing about it? Well, this is where it comes into the broadcast of saying women in Femtech, these are things that matter most. If you had not known about that, we would have not maybe able to step up and actually develop technologies and services that will actually serve us better. Because really, we're the power of the family. We're the family glue. And without us being there and available and having diseases affect us differently and not having the kinds of products and services that will attend to us, that's where the family units will fall apart, but more importantly, the community and the global unity at large. I'm going to switch gears for a second. You saw I circled again another company. It's called My Lab Box, and I'll get to that next. And I was going to say that it not only does disease affect women differentially, but also affects disease affects women disproportionately. So in this case, you can actually talk about it in where in areas of osteoporosis, immunodeficiencies, cardiovascular diseases, and STDs. I'm going to try to click this here. Sorry. So I'm just going to mention two companies which I have had the pleasure of advising. One, as I mentioned, is Athena Feminine Technologies, and the other one is My Lab Box. These are just two opportunities. And again, as Gwen and Ayla have alluded, are opportunities to actually do some case studies in the part of our courses. I thought I'd just give you a little taste of why. And Athena Feminine Technologies, what's really interesting about them is that this is not a new company. This company was founded in 2000, and actually they received an FDA clearance in 2003, specifically focused on pelvic floor health. And they thought they had done everything right. They went out to the market, they had OBGYN community support, they got the healthcare payers insurances coverages, so they thought they were ready to go to the market, and they're specifically targeting the US market. Lo and behold, the adoption was low. What they did find out in actually doing their research in retrospect was that the people that consumed the product were actually not in the United States, but they're in Asia and they're also in the MENA regions. So that was a shock to them. And more importantly was that they had realized that the assumptions that they had, even with some of the market validation, that there's something about Femtech that's unique. It's not for the faint of heart. And why? I think a lot of it has to do with it. The information is, and the things that we're talking about are highly sensitive and highly personal to women. So there are going to be a high variability across cultures, across regions that need to be attended to. So now I'm going to flip over to My Lab Box. Remember, I mentioned that STDs affect women disproportionately. It's very interesting. As people may or may not know, is that for sexually transmitted disease, it's often asymptomatic in women, and like, for example, with chlamydia and gonorrhea. When a disease is asymptomatic, then it often goes untreated. This could have huge long-term health consequences, everything from pelvic inflammatory disease to infertility to ectopic pregnancies. So what are we going to do about it? So here are these two founders who decided, okay, I think we have a solution. What can we do to provide confidence and care, but in the convenience of your home? to develop My Lab Box as a way to actually get diagnosed for STDs and STD treatment with the sensitivity that it was discrete. Trying to click and it's not clicking. My apologies here. Let's see if I can advance it. There you go. So Anya had alluded to the idea that Femtech had initially focused on technologies that were on women's health alone. And I would argue, let's maybe perhaps expand that definition of what Femtech is. And here are just three examples: Elfest, House, and Rent the Runway. I decided to introduce these three companies because they have some very interesting implications on how it affects women and women's livelihood and the ability to thrive globally. These three women all found that in their aspects of their life, they felt that they're not well served. So what did they do? They decided to find companies. And with that, I want to introduce Elvest. Elvest was founded by Sally Kroshak. Her problem was that she recognized that the financial industry just wasn't serving women well. So she decided that she's going to create her own platform. She and her team created a platform that created financial and to help women to attain financial and their professional goals by increasing their financial literacy, and also help get counselings and consults for career development. And with that, she's raised recently $33 million in 2019 and is growing strong. And she exclusively and specifically targets women to help them so they can also have the opportunity to realize their own goals and to unleash a power of positive ripple effects, not only for their families and their friends and the community at large. House, who was founded by, or actually co-founded, shall I say, by Addie Tartoko and her husband, Alan Cohen. Both are two Israelis. This is just an amazing story. Initially, they created the platform to solve their own problems about how do you do renovations and remodeling in an easy way. She found herself piles of cutout magazine inserts of furnishings, and she had difficulties with papers of recommendations for professional services and designers, and that just became too much and overwhelming. So she and her husband decided to co-creatively create a platform that created a multi-sided market that actually tends to millions and millions of homeowners. To date, and well, they have raised in 2017, $400 million with a valuation of $4 billion. The next one I'd like to turn to has to do with an interesting market. Again, is highly unique to women, where women were finding that the task of finding clothes that fit with them for them was just an incredible time sink. And so then came the birth of the fashion subscription model. And here, these two founders decided to flip it on its head. And you've all heard of Stitch Fit and other kinds of fashion subscriptions. But Jen and Jenny, the two co-founders of Rent the Runway, decided that they're going to do something differently. What they decided to do was that they're going to adhere to several values. They wanted to attend to the value that we all wanted access to high fashion, but they all wanted to do it in an affordable way. So instead of buying your clothing, they also offered a platform to actually rent high fashion and make it accessible to more people. Well, this is interesting because it isn't just fashion. As you see in the slide here, I'm talking about the circular economy. What they also attended to was something that mattered most. And this is what Gwen had alluded to before about the idea of an unusual, and I wouldn't say unnecessary female perspective, but the idea that the female brain had a more of a global perspective, perhaps more of a broad perspective where they could take multiple sources of information and feed in and then how to integrate that in a way that they found meaningful, and it attended to some values that are important. And so with that, the circular economy, and I want to allude to it later in our courses, is an important key factor going forward as entrepreneurs develop their own technology. And so I'm just going to quickly go through this. And this again is a sort of a teaser and a taster about some of the things we might talk to in the course. Now, as you know, in the matter of months and weeks, actually to months, the pandemic has transformed lives throughout the world in an unprecedented scale. And the question is to entrepreneurs, how are you going to both thrive in the time of COVID? And more importantly, is how you're going to continue to create in the time of COVID and then some. And so here I'm just elucidating some things about how the pandemic in some ways has actually shined a greater light in telemedicine. So you see two companies, Neurax and Maven. Maven, for example, had garnered about $43 million in investment money to actually create a telemedicine platform that creates both patients and their providers a safe way to communicate and still get care at home. I'm going to also just allude to some of the second, third, and fourth order consequences of COVID that we haven't considered. And this is something that Anya touched about, where there are other technologies in the high-tech field that women can definitely play a significant role, especially with the fact that they're keen observers and they're creative. And so I'm just going to bring your attention to one particular company called MindGlow. MindGlow was the brainchild of a woman named Nelda Paquin, who had come from a military family and also became an FBI agent. And she decided to create an immersive technology which will help train employees and to actually respond during an emergency. And so, as I mentioned, this is just a little taster of some of the things that you experienced in the course. So what's the course about? Well, as Ayla had alluded to, it'll start at the beginning of August. It'll run for 9 weeks. And with Gwen, Lori, and Heidi talking about the different aspects of what an entrepreneur needs to pay attention to. And in the course of not only the development of the course, but also talks about some of the things that I mentioned is what investors pay attention to and some of the interests and issues that will be of concern. So we will arm you with some tools, experiential tools to actually apply to your own companies. We encourage all stages of companies to be invited, particularly those of later stage, to help you scale. And as Anya mentioned, scale beyond Israel to attend to other markets in the global field. And with that, I'm going to now turn the stage over to Ed. Thank you very much. And I'd like to also thank the U.S. Embassy and the MIT Entrepreneur Forum for championing our cause.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you for a very exciting talk about more opportunities and more successes of women. And as you just mentioned, we have this 9-meeting course, weekly meeting every Wednesday at 6 p.m. And an extra, first of all, both speakers, both Gwen and Gail, are going to be extremely involved with each and every company that is on the course, communicating. You're going to get some homework, and you're going to have the homework evaluated. It's not just lectures and go home. You have to work throughout the course. And it's very important for me to mention the incredible mentors that have volunteered their time in order to work with these companies. And I would like to start with Ella Al-Khalai, who many of you probably know, Vice President at IBI Investment House, founder of Invest in Yourself, an IBI investment advice forum for women, who also writes a weekly column in the Globe's online opinion section. We then go to Renana Ashkenazi, who manages the investment team at Growth Ventures with a strong technical background and extensive product and managerial experience in the areas of technology, global innovation, and strategy. On to Shirley Schaeffer-Hoffman, a biz dev expert and investor, formerly with Capital Nature, where she built a successful portfolio together with her friends, and currently leading business development of green tech and food tech and agri-tech technologies at Ben-Gurion University. We also have Esther Barak-Landes, an entrepreneur, investor, and consultant. The 2018 Choice of Geek Time for one of the leading women in the Israeli high-tech, founder and board advisor of Open Valley Israel, managing board member of IMA Foundation, a subsidiary of the YNS Nazarian Family Foundation. Gaia Loren comes with a strong background of senior positions in IT companies as well as early stage investments. Yael Margolin, who went from management position in a VC firm to managing Gamida-Cell, a biotech company, to later go public on NASDAQ. Efrat Marmur, an entrepreneur and global business professional combining both pharma and IT backgrounds. Dalia Megiddo, an entrepreneur and investor in and around biotech, currently CEO at Nezas Pharma. Sandrine Montsma, co-founder of Bridges Israel Impact Investment Fund, served as CEO and board member in various companies and industries. Ronya Rubinstein, until recently, Director and General Counsel of R&D Unit of Rambam, one of Israel's leading hospitals. Chedva Sanderovich, a process expert and a consultant to the European Innovation Council of the European Commission. Nava Svelsky Sofer, board member, entrepreneur, investor, and global speaker, an expert on innovation, commercialization, and entrepreneurship, and head of music technology innovation at the Rimon Music School. Orly Tori, partner at TriVentures VC with a strong general management and tech transfer background, including biotech, and Limor Nakar-Vincent, Deputy Executive Director of the Bird Foundation, Israel U.S. Binational Industrial Research and Development, one of Israel's most important investment, so to speak, bodies with no equity involved. So this is the team we have right now for a group of 12 entrepreneurs that will be selected from the entrepreneurs that apply to the program. We'll send you application forms. You can take a look at the MIT Enterprise Forum site for further information, and we will select the best and the most promising companies to this course. The course is actually more of an acceleration program, and it's not just for ideas or very early stage. It's certainly suitable for later stage. Okay, we have all the all the power ready to make you grow and develop your company globally, including the United States. And it's now time for Q&A, and we already have a number of questions sent to us. You're welcome to post more questions on the Facebook page chat. And the first question is really, when I come to an interview and I'm being asked by an investor, how are you going to manage the two positions of being a housewife, mother, family leader, and a very, very business CEO? How do I cope with such a question? Who wants to go first? Gail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. It's like any other project management, you think about your priorities. And I think one of the tools that has helped me is to stay very present. And so you're giving 110% while you're there, and then you switch gears. And I think one of the unique aspects that women have, and we do almost seamlessly, is that we do manage multiple tasks at the same time. Our minds are always working collectively. And if anything, having the opportunities to both have a family as well as having a career, it enriches my experiences that you bring to bear in the different companies that I have helped run and advise. And so I think if anything, it's a very good fit. I mean, one of the jokes that you used to say in the 70s and 80s was that a woman in the home was a CEO of many different people running many different tasks all simultaneously. So there is, it does take some juggling, it does take some time, but also the second lesson I would learn is also self-care. And taking time for yourself, and allowing yourself to check in once in a while, and giving yourself permission to do that, so that to make sure that you're also on course too. It's like any CEO of any other company. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of all the other people that you intend to.
Yeah.
What would you like to add?
Yeah, I'd love to. First of all, I'm sorry that you continue to be asked that question. I think men are becoming a little more sensitive about it, but it's good to raise, because if they don't ask it, they're thinking about it. Investors would love to know that there's nothing else in your life. You're going to be singularly focused on making money for them, and that you're going to do nothing for the next 3, 4, 5 years, but focus on that. A break in that scares them, whether they're men or women. But I think we're increasingly seeing that, especially based on your biology and your age, if you can run without sleep, that's great. A lot of entrepreneurs, men and women, learn how to do that. They get on planes, they fly around the world. But there are increasingly role models. And when I mentioned Survi Sarna, while she's building this company to a fabulous exit, and she had been told all of her life she probably would never have children. So she was tickled, pleased as punch that she was pregnant. She now has 2 children, and she was one of the top 30 under 30 women in the country. So that's a fabulous role model, and there are more. So I think as investors, and we all see that, and we experience fabulous women having a child, they're, you know, off for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, they're still involved. Their mind is there, their passion is there. And I think you can make an investor know that this is committing your life, your intellectual property, your energy, and you have the skills to integrate that if you choose to. So just know that there are more fantastic role models.
I absolutely agree. And I have to say that women are getting such incredible results, although they are probably running a family in parallel. So what are you asking this question for?
Yeah.
Another question was, if we enroll on the course, what will you be able to do for us in developing our business in the United States?
Can I take that first, Gwen?
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
one of the first things that would be helpful is recognition about what the trends are. So investors, we're particularly interested in companies that are not building for today, but building for decades in the future. And what that will do in terms of those that are going to be participating in this course is it'll give you some sense of trajectory of what technologies are going to be of great interest, what technologies are going to play a huge role post-COVID, and how do you then look at your own products and services and determine whether or not what you have today is going to be ready and prepared for what you're going to be needing in the future. And that's what one of the courses is going to provide for sure. In addition to that, stepping back, once we recognize that there may or may not need some product changes, is now looking at your team and determining whether or not you have the skill sets to actually attend to developing the products and services that are going to be built for the future. And then thirdly is then how do you express the value of what you intend to do to investors so that it can continue to garner resources both on the funding side as well as and just to be really clear, and this is something with it when I had an underscore, but I think it's a good point to talk about now. It's not just the funding, it's the phone book. Okay. And I think the network that you decide to build here and actually grow globally will speak volumes. And Gwen and I can both attest to that personally, professionally, that it is, we co-invest. I can tell you that for sure. We actually often leverage our village to help us expand our global footprint in our companies. And for that reasons, this is one of the values that this particular course will bring.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think it's really important to distinguish between stage and when it makes sense to even try to enter another market, whether it's the United States, the EU. It's really important to have absolutely clear proof points in your own backyard. Solve for the problem in your backyard. Figure out product market fit. You really have a compelling value proposition. And I hope you've all read Startup Nation because it's about your country and it is so fabulous. And I just love the example of the young Israeli who shows up and Benchmark Capital calls up one of his buddies from the PayPal mafia, we call them. And he goes in and pitches. And the guy from PayPal is sitting there like, oh yeah, who is this kid? You know, he really is going to get money from Benchmark, and was very cynical. And that young man knocked this guy's socks off. And you want to read that story because it's all about, it's a lead story. It's all about the power of how talented he was. And within nanoseconds, caused this investor to go, wow, I need to take another look at this. So it's that wow factor. When you really have something compelling, you know, I think if anything, I mean, investors have so many opportunities under their nose, especially in Silicon Valley. It's hard to get their attention. if you can get their attention and you're at the right stage, they may ask you to set up an office here, the headquarter here. They want to know that you'll learn, live, and breathe the US market if you think that's the market you're serving. And then I want to say that we also want to be a little sensitive to the brain drain. We love finding these best and brightest and pulling them over here. And yet we also know we want you to thrive and build your own ecosystem that we continue to partner. So how do we serve and support and find that right balance? And I think that's also what we'll be able to get into in detail and talk about in the class. But it's, read Startup Nation, you'll love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're 10 minutes behind time, and I think it's time to summarize now. Again, as we said, we have on the course, on the acceleration program, we have Gwen, Gail, we have Lori as the legal advisor and the legal lecturer. We have Heidi Brun talking about IP, patents and everything around patents. At the MIT Forum, myself, we're going to be highly involved and assisting companies wherever they need our help. And we are inviting you to write to us and let us know that you're interested. We'll send you the form to fill in, and we'll meet you again 3 weeks from today. Thank you. Thank you all for being here with us. A big thank you to all of you speakers. A big thank you to all of our sponsors, and a big thank you for all our supporters, our mentors, and everybody here. See you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.